Well, let's talk about this. President Trump just held a high-stakes meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky and a handful of European leaders in Washington, D.C. It looked like a teacher scolding a group of kids sitting around his desk. Like, hey, guys, this is how the world works. Would you like to learn how the world works? It's not run by you, all you toadies over in Europe. Look on the left there. Yeah, I was going to say, look on the left. Yeah, look on the left of your screen there. Of course, that is Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, arms crossed, that she has to sit in the same room as these fools. Anyway, of course, when I hear the phrase security guarantees, this was a big thing that President Trump was talking about. Security guarantees, the word has come up now in the last 24 hours, security guarantees for Ukraine. Of course, when I hear that phrase, immediately I think, oh, American forces, American money, American weapons, U.S. resources, all of it, potential U.S. troops on the ground, more NATO bases, maybe even NATO membership. That's not what Americans signed up for, of course, when they voted for Trump. In fact, look at the latest poll numbers on that very question. Only 30% of Republicans support aid to Ukraine. Democrats, though, in blue, love sending money to foreign countries. 77% of Democrats want to put more guns and assistance in Ukraine. Of course, Ukraine has been a wonderful money laundering operation for Democrats. So, of course, more money flowing to Ukraine would flow back to them in their campaigns. No doubt.
Well, I think that's an oversimplification, though, because Democrats love the media. They love to believe everything the media says. Therefore, they believe that Russia is the aggressor. They believe the war started in 2022. They probably don't understand what the heck is going on, and the media will not walk back the history of this conflict. So they are a victim of their own lack of critical thinking. I don't think it's just as simple as they love the war. They just don't like to study.
Okay, well, I guess I should, differentiate when I say Democrats. I mean, Democrats, yes, at large, who are registered Democrats, but I really mean the voting bloc in Washington, congressional Democrats,
sure,
who have made a lot of money off of the war in Ukraine.
Sure.
So differentiation there. But anyway, Zelensky came out of that meeting, basically said the quiet part out loud. America's participation is critical to any so-called peace deal. He even stood across from the White House and told reporters that the United States needs to send a clear signal that it'll be part of Ukraine's future security. Translation, Uncle Sam is on the hook for this, really. Trump, for his part, kind of kept things vague afterwards, talking about very good protection and very good security. Of course, the neocons like disgraced Ambassador John Bolton would love nothing more than U.S. troops in Ukraine. CNN dragged this fossil out to put on TV. Watch.
Ambassador, when you look at what's been reported about what is on the table regarding a potential peace deal, you're talking about some sort of security guarantees in the form of a reassurance force that President Trump, as you pointed out earlier, Jeff, would not rule out U.S. forces being a part of, even though he's been skeptical of it, expressed skepticism before. And then also this idea that there would be some kind of Article 5-like agreement between allies of Ukraine to intervene if Russia were to advance its incursions down the road. Is that actually enough to keep Vladimir Putin away from his ambition of remaking the Russian imperial order?
I think we're a long way from any of that. I can't wait till the MAGA base hears that Donald Trump has committed American combat forces, U.S. forces against Russian forces on the line in Ukraine if the Russians violate the ceasefire. One nuclear power directly against another nuclear power. I don't think that's what they signed up for with Donald Trump, and I don't think he's necessarily thought through that implication either. He wants a Nobel Peace Prize, and he wants it now.
Scruffy, by the way, get in your super chats now. I was just trying to click on this one. I can't click on it. Tried. Anyway, Scruffy something said Bolton's mustache tingles for war. It always tingles for war, and so it does. So he even called Putin during the talks, and during a hot mic moment caught him saying that Putin wants a deal. But here's the other problem. Any deal that ropes America into long-term defense commitments in Eastern Europe is not America first, it's Europe first. And that's exactly what Trump's base does not want. So what's next and how will all of this play out? Let's ask Colonel Robert Maness, the host of the Rob Maness Show, who joins us now to talk all about this. And we got a lot of questions for you. Colonel, great to see you. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, it's good to see y'all. Thanks for having me back on.
Our pleasure. So just let me just get your assessment. There was a map that was being shown in this room. And from a military strategy, tactical perspective, I want to get your take on this. This was over Trump's shoulder in the room here. And this, of course, is what's being discussed. Like Crimea seems to be off the table. These areas in red. Like, what are we looking at here? And what does this mean for Russia? What does this mean for a peace agreement?
Well, that looks like the former Ukrainian territories that are now either occupied or controlled by Russia in some way or another. From what I can see, it's similar to the map I showed on my show on Monday. But what it doesn't show is the little area up there to the northeast and to the west of Donetsk. The Donetsk, what's called an oblast. It's kind of like a state. In that part of in that country, that there is a small area there that the Russians are asking for that territory that they don't occupy right now, but it's where the Russian armed forces have been making a lot of gains here, especially the last week or so, in getting on that territory and having boots on the ground. And in return for that, the Russians are offering further down to the southwest there, along the Kherson border and the other oblast. I can't remember the exact name of it. Something like it starts with a Z. There's some territory there that Russia actually occupies that they're willing to back away from and have the Ukrainians take that. And it's about twice as much territory size-wise as this small piece of territory on the west side of Donetsk. And what they're trying to do, it appears, is fill out the borders, the regular borders of each one of those oblasts the way that they should be from a formal border on the map perspective. That's what I'm seeing.
When we hear European leaders say, oh, we want this land back, we're really going to try and get it back, that seems like the dumbest thing ever. And when you look at that map, can you give us a sense of what would that take militarily? It feels like we would need all of China in order to win that. And it's just like I said, it seems so dumb. But what are they talking about?
You have to have the armed forces of the United States on the ground and in the air, at sea, and in every other domain, space, cyber, fully engaged in combat operations there. I mean, the Europeans, last time they needed to talk about a peacekeeping force potentially to go into Ukraine, had trouble putting together 20,000 troops that they could guarantee would be available 24/7, 365 to be part of that peacekeeping force. So the NATO forces and European Union countries are just not capable of doing that on their own. So that's what they're asking for, guys, is they want my kids. They want me to put a uniform back on even. I'm sure they would agree to it. I'm breathing and I'm able to walk and hold a rifle if necessary and go shoot at Russians on behalf of a border that is not a vital national interest where it's located at to the United States of America. That's the problem here. And I'm not being Rob Maness there. I'm paraphrasing Barack Obama, what he said about it. The problem is what he said. The problem is that where the Ukrainian border is not a vital national interest to us, and it is one to Russia. That's the problem. And the European countries saw that, and that's why they came and sat in front of that desk in the Oval Office yesterday like a bunch of subordinate commanders to the real commander-in-chief, because they recognize the reality of the situation. That war is lost. They're not going to gain that territory back without a huge fight and tens of thousands of dead European and American kids that the MAGA supporters are not going to support.
So it seemed that Putin walked away from that meeting in Alaska pretty positive. And that seems to be on the Russian side. So did Trump. It seems like peace is kind of like in the air, on the table, floating around. The agreement would, I guess I'm just sort of stunned by Zelensky's comments about security after all of this. So is he under the impression that Trump is going to put some sort of American security or NATO security where they could invoke Article 5 if for some reason, I guess almost like a proxy NATO country? They wouldn't be NATO. They wouldn't be admitted as NATO, but we would enact Article 5 and would sort of wrap them up in like a warm blanket and protect them anyway. And would Putin even go for that?
Well, Putin apparently has agreed to what Steve Witkoff's phrase was Article 5 like protections, no NATO membership for the Ukraine. And the president has said that. He's tweeted out no NATO membership, no American boots on the ground either. Now, there's a lot of room there to talk about other things when you really think about those two phrases. And I think that's why everybody came away from the Alaska meeting so positive, is that Putin said, hey, I'd be willing to accept some Article 5 like guarantees so the Ukrainians would be comfortable with doing this. The other reason they came away in a positive mode, I think, is because of this willingness of the Russians to give twice as much territory back to Ukraine and only ask for this one small area, which is strategically and tactically important to the Ukrainian armed forces defenses, which is why they're trying to push back on that a little bit. But I don't think that they're going to be able to come up with a good argument. However, let's talk long-term American commitments. We still have a NATO treaty with the NATO countries. And so America is still going to be involved in that, even though we're demanding that the Europeans step up, and many of them have finally acquiesced to President Trump's demand and agreed that they're going to spend more on their defense, acknowledging that if they think Russia's a real threat to Europe, they have to pay the bill, so to speak. But where the United States, I see, and I'm just speculating here, our support for this effort comes into play is to continue to do what we've done from an intelligence perspective, a logistical support perspective, and from selling arms and those kinds of things. But the day of the giveaway has got to end. The day of the giveaway has got to end. Ukraine has got to become a country that establishes its own economy, can pay its own government officials and government official retirees instead of the United States doing it. You guys know that we have done that with some of this aid that we've given them. We basically put them all on Social Security and added that to my bill and your bill. I mean, think about the tax check you're going to write. I'll pay taxes again before the end of the year because I pay estimated taxes, as a lot of us do nowadays. And every time I write a check, I'm thinking about that issue. And President Trump knows and is also thinking about that issue. The other thing people aren't really talking about is the potential positive of becoming better related with the Russian government from an economic perspective, and maybe pulling them away from China's desire to be a hegemon in the world, and maybe even subsume the United States' role as the global world power and overtake us in that regard, and maybe create a little bit of separation there from the bad decisions the Biden administration made, which drove Russia right into the arms of the Chinese Communist Party.
Sure. And if you are, keeping track, it's the Democrats who continue to escalate against Russia by fomenting the coup, by continuing to escalate the war, and Republicans have not. So how can Russians trust that whatever President Trump says will be implemented by whoever is elected in 2028?
Well, it's very important that some sort of congressionally approved, U.S. Senate approved treaty occurs out of this peace agreement if the United States is going to be involved only at a certain level, because you're right. Just like with any other agreement, it's trust but verify. I mean, we have to be that way with the Russians, and the Russians are certainly going to be that way with us. One of the things that made Ronald Reagan successful with dealing with Mr. Gorbachev and the Soviet Union, when he was successful at getting them to agree to things, on things like nuclear strategic arms limitations, and those kinds of things, was he didn't ask them to do things that were going to go against their best interests. And I think Mr. Trump, from what I can see and observe, is following the same type of strategy. He's not asking them to do things that go against their interests. He's asking them to consider doing things that are going to help them, especially in the long run, by stopping the killing, obviously, then be able to take what's already a stronger economy than it ought to be, considering the Western sanctions that are on them, and reviving that and creating more of a, not a Western style economy, but more of a prosperous economy for most of the people and build a real middle class in Russia, those kind of things. And the only way you can do that is to have good trade with other nations. And we have a president of the United States today that sees that, understands it, and is working towards that. And I think is going to work towards helping Russia become a freer, more prosperous country if we can get them to agree to stop the killing on both sides of this fight.
Yeah, and that was kind of an amazing moment, too. We'll just sort of get you out of here on that, Colonel, which was there was an aside. I think it might have been from German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, but we're not exactly sure which mail said it. President Trump then echoed it on Fox and Friends this morning, and he said, someone from the European side said, all right, well, let us talk about it for 2 months, and we'll kind of come back to the table. And he said, no, 2 months. He said, in 2 months, 40,000 more people are going to die. Like, we need to get a peace agreement together now. Putin's ready to meet with Zelensky by maybe as early as next week. In Geneva, that might happen.
Well, they don't work in August in Europe.
Right. So Europeans, do not, they're all off on, try to go to the country of Portugal in August. It's shut down. So they're like, August, you want to do some work in August? We don't care that 40,000 people will die. We got to go to the beach.
Our globalist politicians don't work in August either. So
True.
That's true.
That's true.
But yeah,
Well, I guess the good news in all this,
exactly
Colonel,
right.
you have President Trump saying, that NATO will not be involved in this. They can't be. Told Fox and Friends this morning. As far as security guarantees, that's an impossibility. Crimea will be an impossibility. So maybe we'll lend some air support, maybe to the European friends. But it seems like we're getting close to the finish line.
We are, and I have high hopes about it, and especially from the perspective of the main concern that I continue to have, and I think a lot of people in the MAGA community that support the president have, and that is no more long-term commitment added on to Americans, because we've paid enough, we've sacrificed enough, and if the Europeans are really that concerned about Russia rolling over the western part of the continent of Europe like Hitler did, then why are they spending over $1 billion more a year on Russian oil and gas than they are on what they've given to the Ukrainian armed forces? Why is that still happening? And that's still happening.
Yeah, don't listen to what they say. Just follow their actions. That's always a key.
Watch what they do.
Colonel Maness, great to see you. Host of the Rob Maness Show. Check it out. As always, great to have you here, Colonel. Thank you so much. We could be close to peace.
Could be. Keep your fingers crossed and say a prayer. Even if you don't pray, say it anyway. A lot of lives at stake.
Yeah,
Okay.
do all of it. Thank you, Colonel. Great to see you.
Thank y'all.
Now, with everything converging over the next 30 days, I want to talk about today's sponsor, which is tied directly to all of this. And if you're an investor, you need to pay attention to today's sponsor. That's AxeCap Ventures. Here is their ticker on your screen, okay? Take a look at this. Write this down. It's available on Charles Schwab, on Interactive Brokers, any of the big brokerage sites, of course. Now, here's why I'm paying attention to them, and I have been for months now. I can probably count on one finger the number of companies where management kept buying stock on the open market month after month after month at a pace that looked more like a takeover battle than an ordinary insider accumulation, insiders buying up as much of the stock as they can. Now, AxeCap Ventures is the one on one finger. And in 2025, it's as if they're rewriting the rules of insider conviction, in my opinion. The stock trades within a penny or two of its all-time low. Insiders have been buying at much higher prices, even 70% higher than the stock sits right now. So what's driving this? Why are they buying up so many shares? Well, the Converse Gold Deposit in Nevada, one of the largest undeveloped gold resources in the United States, with 5.57 million ounces of measured and indicated and 0.42 million ounces in the inferred category. That's why they're buying shares. At AxeCap's current enterprise value of 26 million USD, the resource is valued at just $5 an ounce compared to peer averages of $40 an ounce. That's a discount of 85%. So in mining, location is destiny, and I believe wholeheartedly that's why AxeCap Ventures has a decisive advantage here. Its flagship Converse Gold Deposit sits in Nevada's Battle Mountain Trend, one of the premier gold belts on the planet. It's responsible for 75% of U.S. gold production. Nevada is one of the safest, most mining-friendly jurisdictions in the world. And with President Trump, of course, pushing to bring domestic mining back to the United States, stop buying minerals from overseas, this is a huge moment. So the Converse gold deposit is actually the largest gold deposit in Nevada, not already controlled by a senior producer company. And only 29 new deposits have been found since 2010. None of them over 10 million ounces since 2016. So lead times from discovery to production now average 20 years. Just let me bottom line this for you, okay? First of all, this is Nevada. It's trading at near all-time lows, with insiders buying relentlessly with a resource that's valued well below its peers. And as I said, ASCAP's gold equivalent resource is valued at just $5 an ounce, 85% below peers averaging $40 an ounce. And insiders of the company have recently acquired $1.2 million in shares, which in my opinion is a huge vote of confidence. So guys, do your own due diligence on this company. Study all of their financials and their public information. I'll have links to their website in the description below, and we'll see you next time because things are about to get really interesting over the next 30 days. Thanks, everyone.